Now, I mentioned in the previous video that once independence was declared on July 4th, 1776, it's plainly obvious that the United States as a new republic had to deal with actually a couple of problems here. First, of course, is the war against the British Empire. This is, of course, because the English Empire is not going to let the colonials just cut off their relations without some kind of military conflict. And as I mentioned in the previous video, the United States was able to actually claim victory because of, well, the resolve of the colonial troops and the exceptional leadership of generals, especially George Washington. But not only that, the French came in, and that's because France was a perennial enemy of the British Empire. So France steps in and provides military and economic support, not to mention the logistics that England faced to wage the war. So they basically just, gave up on their effort to subdue the colonies. And the second problem faced by the new republic was the necessity of creating a central government. Because as we know, this is not going to be, let's say, 13 separate nation states, 13 separate countries, right? No, this is the United States, United States of America. And if they're all going to be united as one single country, you need to form a central government. But note the irony here. The whole reason for declaring independence in the first place, not to mention all the prior conflicts with the mother country, or the former mother country of England, right, going back to 1763, was around the issue of this powerful central government trying to impose its authority upon the colonials. Of course, that's from the colonial perspective. So now the U.S. needs to create a new central government, right? Centralization. And they're also at the same time fearful of a central government. So this is sort of a paradox. All right, so what happened, therefore, is the formation of the United States' first government, and this is the first constitution. It's the Articles of Confederation. And, well, interestingly enough, many Americans don't actually know that the United States had a first constitution that basically failed and was replaced by another constitution, which is, of course, our current constitution. But the first constitution was ratified in 1781 and lasted until 1787. By the way, notice that we declared independence in 1776, and there's this 5-year period between 1776 and 1781 where there's no actual central government. And this is a period when, of course, we were waging war with the British Empire, but at the same time engaged in heated debates as to how to design this new government. And it took that long to iron out, if you will, the differences and come to agreement. So again, this is our first government, our first constitution. And it shouldn't surprise us of this fact that the framers of this Constitution made sure that it was as decentralized as possible. Now, another way to say this is they deliberately designed this Articles of Confederation to be weak. Okay, and when we use the term weak, meaning that relative to state governments, most of the power lies with state governments. And in relation to state governments, that federal government, the Articles of Confederation again, is weak. Now, this is going to be, reversed when we talk about the 1789 Constitution, our government today, which is the other way around. The state governments are weaker than the federal government, as we probably know. Moreover, as you see here, there's only one chamber, if you will, in Congress. The term for this is unicameral, all right, one legislative body. And, that's opposed to two bodies, which today is the Senate and the House of Representatives. Here, it's only one legislative body. And the way it works out here is each state has one vote. Okay. Notice this: there's no executive, no president, and there's no judiciary. There's no Supreme Court, as we call it today. And here it doesn't surprise us with the next feature: no power to levy taxes. All right. And you could, be certain that the framers of this government made sure to include that as a feature. Another interesting thing here is this Articles of Confederation as a central government had no power to regulate interstate or foreign commerce. Basically, what you have happening here, in other words, are 13 different economies, for each state. All right. So again, you can't coordinate this trade and commerce, right? Uh, Not only within among the colonies, excuse me, but also with other countries, and you could almost foresee how that's going to cause problems, right? All right. Now, it's deliberately weak. It's deliberately decentralized, and this is going to lead to problems. This period, even after victory in the war against the British Empire, was a period of deep instability, deep crisis. Okay, this whole period of the Articles of Confederation, and it boils down to this: that the government, the federal government, was just too decentralized. It wasn't united enough. What you have here is a very loose confederation of states. And this was due to the inherent weakness of the Articles of Confederation again. Okay. For example, what are some weaknesses? Well, it lacked the power to tax, as mentioned. So, what happens, on the other hand, when you need to raise revenue? This is a period of deep crisis again. You need revenue in some cases, in many cases. How do you acquire that revenue? Well, you can't through taxation. You could ask each state to contribute, but that's usually not going to work. And by the way, whenever they met, the appointees to the government, they always put their state first, right? In fact, that's how most people felt about their allegiance to the Articles of Confederation, that you put the state first before the federal government. If you're from Virginia, you're a Virginian first and an American second, right? If you're a New Yorker, you are a New Yorker first and an American second. So you associate with the state. If you're a leader and policymaker, you're more concerned about your state than the whole country, all right? So you could see the implications here. What's lacking really is nationalism, okay, which we will discuss in a different topic. And moreover, you see these flare-ups of rebellion starting to happen within the Articles of Confederation due to this period of instability. Even though we won the Revolutionary War, there are episodes of rebellion, interestingly enough. And the most famous one, which turned out to be the inflection point or the turning point, was Shays' Rebellion. And to just kind of summarize what happened here, in Massachusetts, away from the seaboard like Boston, more inland, more west, where it's more populated by yeoman farmers, that common farmer. And many of these are poorer farmers. But during this time, you see this economic downturn or depression. So these farmers began to suffer, and they could not pay their debts. And that led creditors to the point of jailing them and even seizing their property. So they're seizing their private property. Now, we know this: private property is sacred in the minds of the English, and certainly this spills over in the mindset of Americans. So this leads to this rebellion, and it's actually led by a former officer in the Revolutionary War, Daniel Shay, hence the term Shays' Rebellion. And he sympathized with the poor farmers. And here's Massachusetts in a state of rebellion. And Massachusetts appealed to the federal government, but the Articles of Confederation could not do anything to raise an army because there's no army in the central government, right? And they couldn't tax to raise an army. So it was basically powerless, too powerless, right, to deal with this crisis. Eventually, you had to have private armies formed to put down the rebellion. But nonetheless, this convinced many of our leaders that they needed to do something about it because it looked like the republic was going to collapse before their very eyes. And here's the thing about that. You know, you have this first republic in world history, this first experiment with republicanism. What would happen if it didn't work out, right? What it's going to do to, what it's going to prove actually to the entire world is that republics ruled by the people, that just doesn't work. Okay. Just stick to monarchies, stick to emperor systems, right? Forget about republicanism. So, of course, our founders were wringing their hands, agonizing over the possibility that the republic might collapse. So, again, a turning point leading to the drafting and eventual ratification of our second constitution, the 1789 Constitution. All right, so in 1787, you see political leaders meeting in secret in Philadelphia to debate and to discuss the parameters of what this new constitution should be like. Okay? And interestingly enough, when you think about it, it's secret for a reason. All right? That's because they knew that what they were doing was very controversial. Right? Should news leak out that they're doing this, it might be construed as a coup d'etat, a takeover. And when you think about it, is it a coup d'etat? Interesting thing to think about, right? In any case, they in secret and they debate and deliberate and propose plans, and it comes down to two plans or two frameworks for government. And this was sponsored by William Patterson, one plan that is, and he's from New Jersey. And this is against James Madison's plan, and he's from Virginia. So this is the New Jersey plan versus the Virginia plan. And here are the basic, in very basic terms, here's the differences. The Virginia plan favored the large states. Okay, what do we mean by large states? Not geographically, but in terms of population. Okay, so the Virginia plan argued that representation in this new Congress about to be created should be based on population size. The larger your population in that state, the more representations you have, representatives, excuse me. The smaller your state, right, the less. So compare a state like New York, which has, a very big population, even back then, compared to Delaware, let's say, which has a smaller population, and New York is favored in that case, and it's favored via representation in Congress. Okay, and then think today of the House of Representatives, where states like California and Texas and New York have much larger representatives in the House of Representatives versus a state like North Dakota, right, or Idaho. It's basically that, or that's the legacy of what we're talking about. Moreover, the Virginia plan favored what's called a bicameral legislature, meaning two houses. And of course, we know that's true. Today, Congress has the House of Representatives again, plus the Senate, right? Now, when you compare the Virginia plan to the New Jersey plan, what you notice is that Patterson's plan, the New Jersey plan, favors the small states. And in fact, he supports equal representation for every state. Okay, equal representation, regardless of population size. So that's the key difference, really. The Virginia plan is representation by population, which benefits the large states. New Jersey is equal representation for every state, and that benefits the small states because they have equal representation despite their size. Now, both of them have the power to tax. Okay, that should be obvious. That's a key difference when you compare this Constitution with the previous Articles of Confederation. Okay, but what happens is the Virginia plan wins the day.